steps off the bus, the guy grabbed me on the arm, and he was your size.
Scott now a couple years, and as soon as we met, we immediately connected. We have a lot of common ground as far as military service. Both been to prison, addiction. He's somebody that I knew immediately once I met that I had met a real one. I had met somebody that was, very, very similar to myself. And so he's been a mentor to me. He's been like a brother. He's been a great friend. And so I'm excited to introduce him to y'all today. Scott, do you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself and a little bit of your journey?
Sure. So I'm a pretty much average upper middle class family kid. I'm just, never really wanted for anything. Grew up pretty normal, private schools. But I definitely know, looking back, that I struggled to find, where I connected to people. I was kind of like a chameleon. I'd try to be whatever the crowd was that I was around at the time. I remember that kind of being my whole childhood and growing up. Did a year in college, which really kind of looked like a year of fraternity parties and forgetting that class existed. Decided that, I just wasn't ready for college, but, I wanted to be a grown up. So I signed up for the military. Didn't want to be a grown up by myself. So I married a girl that I knew for about 2 weeks and made sure that she was going with me. We got pregnant a week after getting married, so I had a child in that relationship that I love very much, and he's an amazing young man. And
so she's pregnant as you're going away to basic?
As I'm going away to basic. As you might imagine, that didn't turn out very well.
Right.
There was a lot of infidelity and things like that in that marriage, from start to finish. And as you know, military is not super conducive to young people's married lives.
I don't know if that's something that, I know we as vets know that, but I don't know if the population at large understands that. But I remember when I was stationed at Fort Hood, the 2 most popular days at the club were when First Cav would deploy, or when Fourth ID would deploy. And when they deployed, all the wives and
Yeah, absolutely
they're running to the club.
So I was stationed in Hawaii.
Husbands too.
Yeah, absolutely. I was stationed in Hawaii, so every branch was there. So not only did we knew which battalion was gone, we knew which whole, Coast Guard was gone. We knew when they were out on their thing. We knew when Navy was out. They knew when we were out. And the wives knew all that, and they would go from club to club. And that's just kind of what the military looks like in a lot of sense. There's probably some great marriages, but
right.
I didn't see any.
Right.
It was kind of a culture of get them before they get you kind of deal back then. So that was kind of a struggle early on. As I was young, I had developed over my life this idea that I wasn't good enough in a lot of areas, or I wasn't sure of myself, or I didn't. I wasn't allowed to. I had a lot of ideas stewing around in there that something was wrong with me.
Right.
And it was starting to kind of manifest, and I see it clearly in that marriage where I literally stayed in the relationship after infidelity while I've grown up in this idea that marriage is forever and you don't get divorces and you solve the problems. And so I'm constantly trying to fix what I think maybe I'm doing wrong to keep it together. And eventually I discharged from the military because I thought that was the reason this person was miserable and doing these things. And so I discharged from the military on time, got an honorable discharge, did all that stuff after 4 years. I still say to this day, I probably would have been a lifer if I had been single and been in the military. Who knows? But when I got back to the States and got back around my family and things like that, I kind of got the courage to separate from that relationship. But again, I'm reinforcing this idea that something's wrong with me.
Right.
I can't keep a marriage together. Whatever. I'm socially back in an environment that I've been away from for years now. I've been in Hawaii for 3.5 years. So I come back. I don't really know anybody. Trying to navigate this awkward social environment, trying to find a job. I was an infantry soldier, so I didn't really learn any great skills for coming in and finding a job. And I started, kind of going to the clubs actually with my younger sister, and her boyfriend were kind of dragging me to the clubs where they're going to introduce me to their friends. A lot of drinking, a lot of, I don't know if you remember Mini Thins, the white crosses that truckers love it, that you could buy at the gas station. Right? It's like the first gas station drink. Right. Yeah. That was kind of the thing. Everybody drink a lot and then pop like 5 or 6 of those things.
What were those? Ephedra?
Ephedrine pills.
Okay.
Basically, you take enough of them, make your hair stand on end kind of feeling, and get you home. If you're seeing double, it bring everything back to the center long enough to get home. So that kind of was the routine. And one night I was, we were slamming shots right at, to beat closing time. And a couple of people that I was hanging out with was like, hey, if you want to get right, we'll, come to the car and we'll give you something to make you feel better. And gave me a line of methamphetamines. For the first time in my life, I felt completely right with the world. I felt completely whole. And I knew in that moment, I never was a casual meth user. I never was a ramped up meth user. I never was a weekend partier that graduated into this. I did meth for the first time and I never went without again. Right? Like that was the deal. So from there, the truth is that meth worked for me for a little while. It gave me more courage. It gave me more, made me feel funnier. It made me feel better looking. It made me feel, all those things. It made me smarter. We were just talking earlier about coffee making you smarter for 15 minutes. This is like made me smarter for 2 weeks until I fell over. That's how I felt. Right. And to some degree that was true. Because it helped me have some self-confidence and things like that. And
I mean, in regular people's terms, not even a recovery thing, but it's basically the same thing as people that are taking, what is it called? What's the pill now people takes, all the college kids are on it. Adderall.
Adderall.
Right.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah. I mean, it is, absolutely. And, these kids are studying on this Adderall and stuff, and they're like absorbing all this information and feeling awesome and going in and taking the test and doing really good in school. And some people may be able to do that and get through it and say, I use that device or that pill or whatever to assist me in this. Some people are going to get stuck.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know I was that miserable before it hit me and fixed it. All I knew was something was better. I felt like for the first time I had superpowers. That's kind of how I relate to that. Like I felt invincible.
Right.
And, the crazy thing about addiction for me is, and how I try to explain it to people, is that I didn't know what I was missing until I put something there that said that it fixed it. And then I realized that my shoulders had been carrying all this weight all this long. For the first time, I felt like I could relax a little bit.
Right.
And I just enjoyed that feeling so much that I wanted to pursue it.
Right.
I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know that I was going to be, down the road going to end up homeless. I didn't know that I was going to have any of that stuff come up.
Right.
I just knew that right now, this is what I need to be okay. Right. And that's from this standpoint and this standpoint.
Yeah.
Right. Physically, I wasn't connected to it right yet. And that's kind of the crazy part about addiction that people don't really understand. Like getting physically what is the word?
Dependent.
Dependent is not the same as addiction.
Right.
Right. Anybody that goes in through a major medical procedure that has to be fed opiates can become dependent. They wean you off.
Right.
Because they know you're physically dependent. They don't want you to get sick. So they do a little step down and all that stuff. When we, as addicts, become physically dependent, that is only one component of my disease.
Yeah.
So before I ever got physically dependent on it, I became emotionally dependent.
Yeah.
Spiritually dependent on it.
Yeah.
And then mentally, I started obsessing on how do I keep this going?
Yeah.
Right. And it's working. And that's the biggest problem.
Right.
Is it's starting to do things for me that I couldn't do before.
Right.
I'm more confident. I've got, all this stuff. I was selling computers at the time. I started selling computers like hotcakes, like just hand over fist. I could tell you anything about anything and feel smart about it, and you feel like I was smart about it.
Right.
These
are the things, like this point of view coming from you right now. These are the things that I don't think maybe families of addicts or just regular everyday people, they hear you did meth, and it's just this mind-blowing thing because it's methamphetamines. And for a regular person, yeah, but like as there's a lot of people who aren't addicts who have had the same experience where they were crushing a couple shots before the bar closes. Their friend, hey, you want to go do a bump? And then like, how are you supposed to, how is somebody supposed to, that's having the issues you're having, with self-confidence and all these things, not feeling like themselves. They do this one thing, and then, you get to that point, it's like, oh, you want me to go back to being this hermit crab that doesn't know how to operate in my own body? It's that easy for, people don't understand the decision with that.
Right. And people that aren't addicts will never fully understand it. The best we can do is try to educate and hope that people are open into understanding that it's something that they can't fully understand, but they can maybe open their eyes to the fact that this is not a bunch of bad people running around doing bad things. This is a thing that has grabbed a hold of somebody and started compromising their moral compass because they can't live without it. And it's not just a physical can't live without it. It's this that can't live without it. It got told that it was fixing all these problems, and what it really was doing for me was blocking me from ever processing anything ever again. Because it says, you feel better right now, you don't have to worry about it. I got you.
Yep.
And by the time I realized it didn't have me and it was starting to tear up my life, and I was spiraling into this place where my life was out of control. I had, end up working in the clubs, the only place conducive to what I was doing. I was selling dope in the club so that I could support my habit and be the big shot that I needed to be. And I'm crawling, end up living with dope cooks so that I'm really close to the source. By the time I get to that place, I am not only physically stuck on it, right? My body is like telling me, for you and me, we know that, if I stop using meth, I'm just going to lay down and sleep for a week, and I'm not going to die from it. But it tells me I'm going to.
Right.
It tells me I can't live without it. It tells me physically. It started connecting all these receptors and tells me, like, we're in pain. You're sick. You can't move. You have no energy, and it starts telling me all these physical things that it has to have it to be okay. And of course, at the same time, it's telling me mentally that if I just get this right, I'll get that feeling again of superpowers.
Right.
So it's constant. But at the same time, I'm over here committing crimes. I start doing criminal, besides selling drugs. Now I'm, doing other things. I'm, whether we're stealing, we're stealing from our parents, stealing from other places, stealing from anywhere we can. Little bit of, thuggery and things like that going on during that time. I ended up catching a felony charge. Interesting thing about that was, I'll tell this story quick, but the dope cook that I was living with got arrested, put in jail. His girlfriend was writing forged checks and staying in hotels, bouncing around. I'm running around, trying to just keep keep my fire going.
Yeah.
I get a phone call from her. She's about to check out of one hotel and move to another, asking if I would come give her some dough.
Mm-hmm.
It's 11 o'clock in the morning. I've been up for days.
Right.
I pull into that parking lot, and the cops are putting her into the squad car. And this parking lot, you can only go one way. Like, the cops facing this way, and I'm coming this way, and there's no room to go way around. Like,
Right.
It's very skinny.
So you got to go right.
Or I got to go right by him. And I hear her screaming at the top of her lungs, "That's my drug dealer.
Oh, my.
That's him right there." Right? And
Trying to get herself
trying to get herself out, yeah. Well, the crazy part was there was 2 cops, right? When she said that, the cop turned around and I locked eyes with him. It was my fraternity buddy from college, the cop. And if it had been anybody else, I'd have probably kept going and done the whole run. I stopped. That's kind of a God thing.
Yeah.
For me, I just stopped.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go make amends for that later to him, which is cool that I got to do that. Friends with him on Facebook today, which is also pretty cool. But that was kind of the first major consequence for me. I was selling dope for some heavy duty people. Had some heavy duty people come to my jail cell and try to get me to get them in trouble and things like that. And because of my family and everything, I had a good attorney and got whisked away to Texas. That's how I ended up here.
Okay.
Basically, they told me it probably wasn't a good idea to come back.
Right.
So I didn't, and they got me way out of some trouble that I shouldn't have gotten out of. I ended up on a year of probation call-in, which is crazy, on meth manufacturing, possession, distribution charges. Got dropped to some kind of misdemeanor charge. I don't even know how that happened.
Right.
Another God moment for me. Was whisked away to treatment out here in Kerrville, Texas, and did a 30-day program. Was really doing that to stay out of trouble.
Yep.
So wasn't really much interest in getting better, and the treatment was 30 days, typical therapy, a little bit of 12-step, but mostly, just your standard treatment experience that I'm sure people got better from, but it really was a reset for me, right? It's kind of a feel better, I feel good, I feel healthy, I got some food in me, I got some color back in my cheeks, flirting around with the girls at the program and all that stuff, and decided to follow everybody back to Austin, Texas, and still had like 8 months of that probation over my head, so I kind of clung on to that, stayed sober until right at the end, and started using again. I lived in a sober house. I did all that. I was tattooing on 6th Street. Decided I could be a full-on tattoo artist, own my own shop. Opened a shop. And within a few months, I was selling more dope out of the back of the shop than I was doing tattoos. It was a hangout for a bunch of heavy hitters again. Like, I center myself around those people.
Yeah.
One, because it made me a badass, you know what I mean, to everybody. I created a great image of this street tough kid. Nobody really, I'm out in Austin, Texas. Nobody knows that I went to private schools and all that stuff.
Right.
Like, I'm just a scared kid that doesn't feel good about himself, that I created this image so that you won't mess with me.
Right.
Right? Like, that's the deal. And I got really good at that. And so I spent a couple of years running and gunning here, and heavy hitters, a lot of heavy stuff, got kidnapped a couple of times by people, got beat up at gunpoint, and all I can think is, every time I walk away from a serious thing that was going on with me, every time I walked away, I just puffed my chest out and said, "You'd never take me down." I wore it as a badge of, like, I'm a badass.
Right.
Right. And I was starting to get that reputation out there, and I just, like, thrived off of that. But lower and lower am I getting. Less and less people want me around for very long. One, because they're worried about something bad happening to them or me. Two, I was a nightmare to hang out with. And three, I'm sure I was filthy and stunk because I was running around just basically staying up as long as I could.
Right.
And then falling over.
Right.
Um,
Hold on, one second. Go back. Tell me the first time you get kidnapped, right?
Oh, gosh.
What is in your head as this is happening?
Well, the first time that it happened,
Are you immediately like, I'm dead, I'm gonna die?
the crazy part, the first time I got kidnapped was, I have to go back to this a little bit.
All right.
First time I got kidnapped was as I was getting off a bus from McAllen, where I had been in Reynosa, trying to negotiate a big deal with the Mexicans. Okay, which is also somewhere I never should have been,
Yeah.
and was way over my head. But that's kind of, I just thought I was invincible, right? And because I was dealing with these heavy hitters up there, I got connected to these people down there. And what's crazy is that should not have just dissipated in me be able to walk away after seeing those people. That's the crazy part.
Right.
Like, that's what I know today. But they, I got on the bus and came back up, and as I was stepping off the bus, I got snatched up by some people up here that felt like I had wronged them. I probably had. I don't know.
Right. Did you went over their head or behind their back?
Something. I can't even remember exactly what started it, but they felt like I was a problem for them. And
so, I mean, are they putting a bag over your head? Are they putting a pistol next to you and say, come on, get in the van?
Yeah, basically it's fast. Like, I hadn't two-stepped off this bus. I don't know how they had that much information on me, but 2 steps off the bus, the guy grabbed me out of the arm, and he was your size, about gentleman, and little gun under the rib, and said, if you try to run, I'm gonna kill you.
Right.
And get in the car. And so I did, and they took me. The problem is everybody's on meth, so they're all like lunatics, right? So they take me to this apartment, and at this apartment, and I knew their crew, right? I knew it's their crew,
right?
And they're having a little party, a little meth party, just hanging out. So the badass that takes me over there expects the guy that's partying to watch me,
and that's not
and they forget to take my phone away from me. So, long story short, I got away from it by waiting for people to pass out, texting my location, getting some more people to come by, and I dipped out and jumped in a van and drove off. Right. That was just one of my experiences. My dad got phone calls from people that said they were in gangs and asking for money, extorting money from him, or they were going to kill me. The one time that happened, that I can think of, I just happened to be in jail at the time, so he knew that, unless they were getting me in county,
it wasn't
happening. And I encouraged him to not worry about it. I was safe in county and all that stuff. But I have, don't want to name names of organizations, but I've talked to the heads of a couple of organizations that had people that were rallying troops to come after me and had to explain situations. And like, the crazy part is there's so many times I can say God plucked me out of that situation and placed me over here and said, now what are you going to do? And I ran right back into the mix. And I tell people this all the time. I don't know how many times God's willing to pick me up and put me down. And today I understand that completely, that I don't know, and I'm not willing to risk that I've got another one of these. I'm going to pick you up and put you back down and see what you do one more time.
Right.
Because I've watched too many of my friends die. Too many young people, that are flirting with this. How many times can I go to treatment, or becoming professional treatment goers, or, hanging out in sober livings and not doing what they're supposed to be doing. I've watched people die over and over and over again, or go back to jail, or do those things, or destroy their lives so many times. I understand it completely. And as long as I continue to do the work that I'm supposed to do in my recovery, I get to see that firsthand. I think that's a blessing that God gave me, is through this path, I've ended up here where I watched this stuff from newcomers so much that I'm like, I'm never going to tempt that fate again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big deal.
Right. I can't tell you how many times, like you're saying, looking back, everywhere I bounced around to all over the map, I would always go to the shadiest neighborhood I could find. I'd always get linked up with people that I had no business being linked up with. Like you said, I come from a good family. stepfather's a steel worker, my mother's a teacher. I wasn't raised like that, but I interjected myself into those situations. And I mean, it's got to be a God thing how you're sitting here today, how I'm sitting here today, because there's so many scenarios and situations where weapons were pulled or this or that, or I mouthed off to somebody that I had no business mouthing off to because I think I'm bulletproof and all that. So, I mean, it's got to come down to being a God thing. So with all this crazy stuff, kidnapped, you're getting locked up, out of the military, you've lost your way. What's your rock bottom moment where you just had to look in the mirror and was like, it's time for a change?
Well, crazy part, I don't have one.
Okay.
I did not have one. And just to correct something Shawn said at the beginning, I have not been to prison. I wiggled my way out of prison. Meaning the last time I got brought in, I was brought in with the same charges, second degree felony, distribution, manufacturing, possession, blah, 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 all that stuff. And in Williamson County, which is a tough county, is hard to beat out there. Matter of fact, they didn't care how much money my dad had or anything like that. They basically, they allowed me to get bonded out. I screwed that up. They put me back in. My dad cash bonded me out because I was telling him that I wasn't safe. I used the old, hey, I might not be safe and I need to get out of here. And I would run off every time. Right. But I was good at convincing my dad because my dad is all he wanted to do was me not to suffer. Yeah. He just didn't know how to set the right boundaries or what suffering was going to happen if he, you know what I mean?
Right. And he wants to believe that
wants to believe it
and do well.
Like, wants to believe it. Anyway, he bonded me out with a cash bond, meaning that he put the entire thing up himself, $80,000.
Right. And if
I'd gone, he loses $80,000. And I ran immediately. And 6 months to almost the date, which is where you lose your money, the bounty hunters finally got me and brought me back. They basically revoked my bond. And this is why I got to the story. The judge said, you're not getting out of jail. You're either going to 10 years in prison, or I've got this felony treatment center over here that is open-ended. There's no end date to it. You just have to accomplish certain things to get out, and 7 years of probation. And so that's what I ended up doing. I had enough I sat in jail long enough that time that I knew I had some people waiting on me to show up in prison. Right. There was certain that. And that scared me enough to say, I don't think I want to go and fight every day.
Yeah.
So I went, and it saved my life in a way that it gave me a long enough buffer to start realizing I was 35 years old, and I started realizing I am too old to go back to this.
Yep.
And I will tell you this, in the first month, and this is kind of important for what I do and how I teach, is in the first month of treatment, I was still trying to figure out how to go do it better and bigger, right? I was talking about it all the time. I was trying to make those connections, see who I had back on the street, when we were getting out and all that stuff. The second month, somewhere in the middle of the second month, is where I started realizing and started remembering some of the suffering that had happened, especially over the last 2 years, like the kidnappings, the beatings, and all the things that went down, the betrayals, the homelessness, the loss of everything. That starts creeping in. And I start realizing, hey, I don't know if that sounds attractive to me anymore.
Right.
And then in the third month, I started really doing some work in the treatment aspect of the stuff they were trying to teach me. And I really kind of dived into it, did a good job with it and all that stuff. Still wasn't really interested in a 12-step program. And it wasn't really a 12-step treatment center. But I had to go to meetings because that's what the courts want you to do. So I had 90 and 90. I'm showing up in meetings every day because I have to, getting the court card signed. My bottom that said I can't live like this anymore came a year and a half sober. And that I did not have a physical pain bottom. I did not have a dirty bottom.
Right.
Like I could have gone on forever. I never chose to stop. But where my bottom came was when I realized sober that I was miserable and I was making other people miserable and people didn't want to be around me. And now I've got 10 years of prison still hanging over my head. I have made a decision right before the moment where I surrendered. I made a decision that I was going to go and have some drinks with some guys that I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, I realized you're about to destroy your life completely.
Right.
Like, it's irreversible.
Right.
And that scared me enough to make a phone call. When I made that phone call, it was to a man that I had heard in the rooms because I had to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, I heard his story, and it was very similar to mine and your story. It was very similar to how I lived my life dirty.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't really, I didn't really care about everything else that much at the time, but because I knew that he lived that dirty, I started realizing that he was living good. And now that I need help, that's the guy.
Right.
So I called him, and he's deceased now. His name is Skip Walker. Skip was a Texas A&M football star, CFL All-Star, running back like back in the day, and blew his life up with crack cocaine,
Mm-hmm.
And I could identify with loss and kind of blowing your world up and the dirtiness of the use and all that stuff. But this guy, like, had nothing material really. He could pay his bills and everything.
Right.
Had a wife and kids that he loved very much. He was managing a restaurant, Hoover's. I'll throw that out there. Hoover's restaurant in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
good chicken and waffles.
It's a great place, and Hoover is very passionate about recovery people too. So I love him for that. But Skip, that's what he did, and like, you'd never know he had a celebrity past, right? Or this pro athlete past. You'd never know it. Unless you went to his house, he had a nice little wall and everything. Right. But he did not talk like that. He didn't boast it. He didn't puff his chest out over it. Matter of fact, he was in pain over it most of the time. Right? He was old and beat up.
Right.
But what I will say about that man is he dropped everything to talk to me when I was in the most fear and asked me, and I was just throwing up on him, like, blah.
Yeah.
Like, everything that's wrong in the world, and I'm miserable, and I'm so, like, blah. And he said, listen, I got to get up in the morning. I got to go to work. I want you to sit down tonight. Don't go out with your buddies. Sit down tonight and just write everything you're feeling, and just write it out, right? I want you to be able to read it to me tomorrow and so that we can talk about it. And I'm going to come over right after work. And so I got up the next morning, went to work, came home. He showed up at my house, and we read through that, and we pulled inventory out of it, right? And did a full inventory with him that day. When he left my house, he said, you can call me your sponsor from now on. And that's what I did. And that moment, I realized that I basically did step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in a 2 or 3 day period.
Right.
Right. When I surrendered, all that other stuff didn't even matter anymore. Right. All the stuff that was blocking me from working a recovery program or for getting better was this idea that I needed to control what life looked like. And if I could tell anybody, the first half of the first step of Alcoholics Anonymous says that I'm powerless over alcohol, right? It also says my life had become unmanageable. It doesn't mean that my life became unmanageable because of drugs or alcohol.
Right.
It means that my life was unmanageable and I got a problem with drugs or alcohol.
Right.
My life was unmanageable before drugs and alcohol. Drugs and alcohol made me feel better, and that's why I stopped working on the issues, or if I ever did, I never learned how because it stunted me from emotionally growing.
Right.
And so the unmanageability piece is what really has to be addressed, which is ultimately my spiritual malady has to be dealt with in order for me to get well.
Right.
If I don't feel good spiritually, I'm going to go back to using. I know I told you I could talk forever about this stuff. Like I can't.
Right.
I've either got 2 minutes or I've got
no. You're good. You're
2
good.
hours.
So let me ask you, and not even necessarily in a recovery sense, but so you didn't really have that defining rock bottom moment, but you have been put in enough situations where And luckily you had heard some stuff had seeped in from you being in meetings and stuff like that. So at what point in your journey, what moment do you have where you would say is like your moment of redemption? It could have been when you met your wife. It could have been when you bought a house. Like it doesn't, what moment where you're like, all right, I've made it. Like I'm back.
My my moment of redemption was when my daughter called me daddy, right? You know the story, but I have two sons, one from my first marriage, one from just my drug life and everything. Great sons, all that stuff, but because of my addiction, I did not have the connection with them as a dad, growing up and things like that. And they're not super connected to me,
Right.
In a way that you would expect a father and son to connect and all that stuff. One's not connected to much of anything family oriented because he got bounced around. My first son got bounced around. My second son grew up with a stepdad that he knew as dad.
Right.
And I've been Scott his whole life. He's 19 years old and still calls me Scott, which is fine.
Right.
I'm grateful that I have him in my life.
Yeah.
But I did miss those opportunities, and I have to look back and I have to deal with that stuff in my recovery. Well, my daughter Lily came to us through recovery and somebody else's journey that needed support, that had been out there for a while that we hadn't seen in a couple of years, and just out of the blue called and asked if we could help. And we were able to come in and help, like swoop up this baby that was in crisis, and this mom was still going to be in crisis for a while. We're given the opportunity. I'll keep it real short. We were somehow magically given permission by CPS to foster this child, even though I had a record.
Yeah.
And we did that on our own dime. She was at 15 months at the time, and her birth father died of an overdose during that period. So, we got almost a year and a half with her, taught her to talk, a lot of that stuff was happening during that time. Mom got through her case with CPS and was able to get her back, and then asked us if we would co-parent with her. I'm super grateful for that opportunity. And Lily has known me as her dad her whole life, as far back as she can remember. It's an amazing connection to be a child's hero, and for them to see you as their safe place, and for them to see you as their champion that I never got to experience before. And I really believe, because I was willing to change everything and steer myself towards God, that
He gave me
me an opportunity. And that was my redemption moment. Like, I'm very aware that I was given that opportunity, one, because I missed it, but two, because of the things that I do today, he gave me a chance.
Right. That's beautiful, dude. As soon as you said that was your moment, it gave me goosebumps, because I can't even fathom how that must have felt for you. So
she's 11 now, and every time I start talking about it, I choke up. Like, it's a big deal.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So through all your adversity, through everything, not just in recovery, but just in life, what do you say has been the most valuable lesson you've learned in your journey?
The most valuable lesson is, wow. There's so many for me that I touch on, and I teach so often. Like, really, I really go back to that I have to address my spiritual malady every single day for the rest of my life.
For those people who may be listening who aren't in the recovery world, can you explain just briefly what spiritual malady?
Spiritual malady is my spiritual self that tells me that I'm not okay, or that you're not okay, or that life sucks, or everything's working against me. It's this selfishness and self-centeredness that comes in various forms. It might come in an egocentrical way, in an arrogant way. It might come in a self-pity way. But where I believe I'm the center of the universe and I'm being not given what I want, right? And basically, if I'm in that place, which I just say if I'm in self, I am unable to see the possibilities out there of how to enjoy life.
Right.
Right. But if I can get to outside of self and see how I contribute to your day or to my wife's day or to my child's day, then I can experience so many other pathways to not have to sit in my own crap. And sitting in my crap will take me eventually back to use it. It might not be today. It might not be next year, but I can't live in that place without destroying things around me.
Right.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so important what you're saying. Getting out of self, and like when I go give talks or we do this podcast or anything I do when I'm talking to people, like that right there, helping people, that's what fills that void in my heart that I tried to fill with drugs and alcohol for so long. I say it all the time, we have similar experience, but everybody listening, everybody I come across and talk to, we all have different life experience. If you're blessed enough to be able to get on the other side, you've done the work and you've made it through on the other side, I just feel like for me, if I was just to go on my way and just go live my life and not use that experience to go back and help the people that are suffering through it now, then what was it all for? Like all the pain I put my family through, my friends through, myself through, if I don't use it to help people, then it was a waste to me.
I say this all the time. I believe that God has given me the things in my life that I have because of the type of work that I choose to do. Now, I do spiritual work for myself to stay sober. I work in the industry that I work in because I believe that God directed me to, if you want success, this is the path that I want you on. And if you stop doing that, then all bets are off. Right. Yeah. I also believe he very humorously never meant for me to get very wealthy. Right. Like I grind every day.
Right.
And I appreciate that because I also don't do very well with too much idle time. Like I have things I enjoy today, but as you know, I'm enjoying it while my AirPods in my ear and I'm fielding a phone call or whatever. So like work is important to me. I do get to enjoy my life, but I say all the time I get to enjoy my life because I continue to do things that serve other people.
Right. Absolutely. Who would you say who are your inspirations in life? It could be family, it could be somebody you follow on social media, something like that. But where do you, on a daily basis, where do you draw your inspiration from? Who?
My dad's a big inspiration to me. I mean, he is the epitome of a family man, of a leader, of a success story. My dad went from picking cotton to, being a partner with Ernst & Young, top 3 CPA firm, stayed with one company his whole, like just smartest person I know, insightful, caring, generous, like those things to me, are beautiful.
Yeah.
And there's not, he might not get it right all the time, but his heart's always in the right place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and his intention is always really good. And I aspire to that. Like I don't ever want to, be dishonest with my intentions or dishonest with my word. I want to be generous. And man, that's a hard one. I watch that and I'm just in awe of that.
Right. Yeah. I'm very similar to you. My stepfather, my grandfather, like growing up in the era that we did, to look back and be able to have those strong male figures in our lives. I mean, they don't build them like that anymore.
Right.
It's so much has changed with society today and stuff like that. I try to, thank God I was taught how to be a man and can try to emulate what I was taught, and it happened for you. So I love that pick.
Outside of that, I looked up to Wolverine most of my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wolverine, good one.
Yeah. He was kind of my childhood. That's what I drew.
That's what you're drawing on your notebook.
So a little bit of Wolverine, a little bit of my.
I like it. That's a good mix. One thing, I don't know. I don't know that it had the impact on me that it did, but to share, to be vulnerable for a second for everybody. Every time you and I talk, whenever we get off the phone, we tell each other we love each other, right? And I hadn't met many people that do that. I know everybody kind of in your circle does. Every time I talk to, Tracy, your wife, anybody like that, they do. But I always did that too. And I think it has, because, you or I spent so much time running around being a tough guy and quiet guy in the back of the room that's me mugging everybody, that I remember the first person when I got into recovery that did that and said that, it was like, the weight of the world came, it felt so good. It was like, oh my God, like, he just gave me a hug and he told me he loved him. And so, like, I've always tried to do that. And so it was so refreshing when I met you and we got tight and that happened. And I can remember, especially when I go back to Ohio, we're blessed to be in the recovery community in Austin that to me is second to none, but they don't have that everywhere all over the country. And so when I go back up north to Youngstown, Ohio, I have friends up there who are currently still struggling. I have some that have piddled in recovery or, or in and out, whatever. And I remember a close buddy of mine, Nick, hadn't seen him in years. He was doing well at the time. And I remember, brother, I love you. And I just remember his face lighting up. And it was like, I saw the way I looked the first time that happened to me. So, do you know that has that effect on people, or is that just something you know?
I don't know. I'm kind of opposite. I'm very awkward with it. It's not a natural thing for me. My dad, like I said, grew up in a hard environment where men just didn't really like. My dad probably didn't say "I love you" to me a handful of times growing up that I can remember.
Right.
We still are kind of weird about it. It's getting better. And that's another thing that I really respect about him is like, something has spoken to him to try to say that more often. And maybe it's because he hears me say it. The practice came because my wife was really good at it. And
behind every great man, there's a great woman.
Absolutely. Huh? We should have a whole nother hour. Like, she's a beast.
Yeah.
Right. I know but she's a beast in so many areas. But recovery and that loving and caring is huge with her. And like the "I love you" started coming when first with my recovery. A few. I still like. I'm not a huggy with everybody.
Right.
But when you get into my kind of circle, like that's just what we do. And it becomes awkward not to do it. Right. Which is crazy for me because that's like a million miles from where I used to be.
Right.
Hugging man and telling him I love you was definitely a learned thing, but I love it, and I make sure to tell my friends that I love them every time I talk to them.
Yeah. You never know if it could be the last time,
never know.
Anything like that.
That's right. Never know. I think about that a lot.
All right. So fun question now for you. A little bit of imagination. You're walking out. You're about to fight for the title for the UFC.
Okay.
What's your walkout song? What's getting you amped up?
I would say it's either going to be a System of a Down song. I kind of still go back to Ball with a Ball. I like some Kid Rock.
Okay. Yeah. Good one. That's a very good one.
Yeah.
All right. So what many people may not know, I give Scott a lot of shit. He's a big golfer. So I joke with him about golf all the time, and it's not a real sport, but a couple of these questions got some golf in them.
Okay.
So if I told you for one day you could spend the entire day at any beach in the world, or you got one day to play on any golf course in the world, which one are you taking?
I could play at Pebble Beach and have the best of both. Right?
Oh, you got to find. But you're not on the beach. Are you on the beach?
You are.
Okay.
Yeah, it's right there.
Okay.
I mean, it's right on the shore. Pebble Beach is like my favorite destination golf. So if you could say, I would pick golf over beach every day.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. Coke or Pepsi?
Coke.
Mornings or nights?
To stay up or get up. I'm a late to bed, and I'm pretty early to rise too. Right. But I would say nights.
Okay, night guy. All right. Watch UFC or watch the Masters?
UFC.
All right. You're going to scare me because if you said you would rather watch golf, I was going to call you a liar.
I'll probably record the Masters and watch it later, but I'm a big UFC fan.
I did just watch what just happened. The Open? U.S. Open?
The Women's Open just happened this week. The Open happened a couple of weeks ago, yeah.
During Father's Day weekend. What was that? So I watched all that.
Yeah.
I was into it. It wasn't bad. That dude choked.
Yeah.
I forget
He
what his
just
name
won
is.
this week. Ricky Fowler just won.
Oh, he did?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I was getting into it with my father-in-law. We were sitting there watching and bonding over it. I was acting like I knew what I was talking about.
Look, it's exciting.
All right. Which is more fun to play than watch.
That's right.
Burgers or hot dogs?
Burger.
All right. Play around at Augusta or play around at a local golf course with Tiger. So you could go play an entire round at Augusta yourself, or you got to play at a whack golf course, but you get to play with Tiger.
Augusta.
Oh, really? Okay.
Nobody plays Augusta. It's fathomable you could play with Tiger sometime.
Right.
Nobody plays Augusta.
I'd like to thank my boy Lance for that one. I called him this morning to get a good golf question, so he gave that one to me. All right. Are you more of a Jack guy or a Tiger guy?
Tiger.
Tiger?
Yeah.
He's the GOAT?
He's GOAT.
Okay.
For sure.
Last one. Very important.
Okay.
Who squats more, you or your wife?
Ooh. She does probably.
She has to.
Yeah.
She has to.
I mean, I'm getting old. Like, I don't know if I can put that weight down there.
Right.
Yeah, she does. My fitness centers around golf. Her fitness centers around being a badass. So,
Right.
like, she is ripped right now.
Right. And that she is.
Yeah.
And
She's 2 weeks out.
okay. Where's the show?
Here.
San Antonio or Austin?
Austin.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I say here. Austin. Show of Champions. Something of Champions. On the 29th of July at Parma Event Center. So come out and support for sure.
Brother, I love you.
Love you too.
Good enough, man. I appreciate you calling on, being vulnerable and sharing. We do a little thing at the end of the podcast. We just added it. And so the podcast is called I Am Redemption, right?
Okay.
And so if you would be so kind, if you want to look into the camera and throw out a couple I am statements. I am brave, I'm recovered, I am whatever you.
Okay. I am a father. I am a son. I am enough. I'm important. I'm needed. And I'm of service.
Awesome. Thank you so much, dude. What do you want to tell everybody, what you do today, what you got going with Ascension House?
Yeah. Real quick. So I have Brightside Sober Living in Austin, Texas, which is graduate level sober living homes. We have Ascension House in Austin, Texas, which is a great short-term sober living program that serves as an alternative to treatment if finances or insurance are not readily available. We can do treatment level programming at a low cost and also connect our people with services to help them have a better chance of success moving forward into sober living. We create a sponsorship and sponsee relationship that works for them. We provide them life skill and 12-step groups daily, and we feed them. And so for 30 days, we are completely focused on foundation building of their recovery program before they transition into sober living and are battling the world on their own. I own Extra Mile Recovery in Mississippi. I have a men's facility with 24 beds and a women's facility with 15 beds. Fully licensed, private insurance-based programs, 12-step immersion and trauma-focused. So, yeah.
Social media handles, website, anybody can look up. How do they get a hold of you?
ExtraMileRecovery.com, TheAscensionHouse.com, BrightSideSoberLiving.com. You can also reach me. My phone number is everywhere, so it doesn't matter to me. 901-626-4454. I'm happy to talk to you. Yeah.
Ascension House has a straight badass leading the workouts.
Shawn is killing it. Look, I will tell you this. Since you have come on doing that program and they are loving it, we talked the other day, their PT scores are improving. I talked to the client we discussed yesterday, and she lit up when I said I heard about her scores going up. She's super excited about that. Like, that stuff right there is super important to them. They are feeling self-worth through various avenues: fitness, spiritual work, community building. Like, the things that they're doing there are super important for them to be able to step outside of that, where they're expected to go get a job or participate in life, get on a bus, whatever they start to do. Having the foundation to be able to call my sponsor that I talk to all the time anyway and say, I don't know how to get on this bus, or hey, I don't know how to do an interview, or a buddy that they have started a community build with, or somebody in their home group that they're with, that they know, oh, that person has a job, a career. Maybe they can tell me how to interview, or not to being stuck in self, right? It all goes back to, when I'm stuck in self, I'm going to make bad decisions and I'm going to do things that are harmful to myself. The bigger I can start creating that community, the better chance I got. So that's basically what's happening, and you're a big part of that.
All right, brother. I love you. Thank you.
Love you too.